Hi, I'm Mark, and today on Outside Views, I want to talk about the Brexiteer promises of spending the money from the EU contributions on the UK budget. You know, Boris Johnson, a prominent British politician and former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, played a significant role in the Brexit campaign, and he was a leading figure in the Leave campaign, also known as Vote Leave. And the famous red bus from the title refers to a key symbol and a slogan of the Leave campaign during the Brexit referendum. The red bus prominently featured the slogan, "We send the EU £350 million a week. Let's fund our NHS instead." And this figure was widely publicized during the campaign and became a central message of the Leave campaign, emphasizing the potential financial benefits of leaving the EU. And it was all a lie. Boris Johnson, as one of the key leaders of the Leave campaign, stood in front of the red bus and actively promoted the message that the UK's financial contributions to the EU could be just redirected to the NHS, suggesting that leaving the EU would provide more funding for the healthcare system. However, it's important to say that the £350 million figure was not only controversial and subject to scrutiny, it was just fairy tale. They didn't take into account the UK's rebate from the EU budget, which reduced the amount contributed, and it did not consider other financial benefits and allocations received by the UK as an EU member. After the referendum, the claim of diverting £350 million per week to the NHS was widely criticised as misleading. Well, I criticised it at the time already. The claim became iconic symbols of the Brexit campaign, though, and critics argued that the promise was misleading and that the actual financial implications of leaving the EU were far more complex and uncertain. But nonetheless, this Red Bus campaign slogan played a significant role in capturing public attention and influencing the Brexit debate. Following the United Kingdom's departure from the European Union, which they managed with lies like that, the UK government has been responsible for funding programs and projects that were previously supported by EU funding. While the exact extent of replacement funding varies across different sectors and regions, the UK government has promised to providing funding to fill the gap left by the withdrawal of EU funds. In terms of agriculture, for example, the Common Agricultural Policy, or CAP, was a major EU program that provided financial support to farmers and also rural development projects. The UK government has pledged to maintain overall farm subsidies at the same level until the end of the current parliament in 2024. They introduced a new system called the Environmental Land Management, or ELM scheme, which aims to support sustainable farming practices and environmental stewardship, as they put it. The ELM scheme is, as they say, intended to gradually replace direct payments to farmers under the CAP. In 2016, the UK received a total of approximately £3.2 billion in CAP payments from the EU, and this funding supported various aspects of agricultural production, including direct payments to farmers, rural development projects, and agri-environmental schemes. And this new environmental land management scheme differs from the Common Agricultural Policy in several key aspects, and there are some real big differences. The CAP primarily focused on providing financial support to farmers for food production, income stabilization, and rural development. In contrast, the ELM scheme aims to incentivize and reward farmers and land managers for adopting environmentally friendly practices, enhancing biodiversity, improving soil health, mitigating climate change, and delivering other public goods related to the environment and sustainable land management. In short, now they are paying them for not using their land. Under the CAP, farmers receive direct payments based on factors such as land area, historical production, and specific agricultural practices. The ELM scheme intends to transition away from direct payments based on land ownership or agricultural practices. Instead, they want to provide payments based on the delivery of environmental outcomes and public goods. So, for doing nothing. Because that would mean that farmers that previously got an important part of their income from the EU are in real big trouble now or have to stop producing. And regarding other projects, the UK government has established several funds and initiatives to replace EU fundings. One example is the Shared Prosperity Fund. The UK government has committed to creating the Shared Prosperity Fund, which aims to provide investment in local economies and support regional development across the UK. The fund is intended to replace the European Structural and Investment Funds, which included programs for economic development, social inclusion, and skills training. And then we have the UK Community Renewal Fund. In the short term, the UK government launched the UK Community Renewal Fund to support local areas in preparing for the full rollout of the Shared Prosperity Fund. And this fund provided financial support for projects in areas such as employment, skills, and community development. And we are discussing research and innovation for a long time because they also committed to maintaining and increasing funding for research and innovation. The UK Research and Innovation Organisation has been established to oversee research funding programs with the aim of promoting scientific collaboration and maintaining the UK's position as a leader in research and development. But there's a big but here. But in none of these cases, the UK government is even close to replacing the original amounts. But I must not forget to close the case on the Red Bus and the NHS, of course, in this video. In the lead up to the referendum, the Leave campaign famously claimed that leaving the EU would allow the UK to redirect those 350 million per week from the EU budget to the NHS. But it's important to note, first of all, that this figure was completely exaggerated and misleading, and that following the referendum, the UK government did commit to providing additional funding to the NHS, but the amount fell more than short of this 350 million figure. In 2018, the UK government announced a 5-year NHS funding settlement known as the NHS Long-Term Plan. The plan outlined increased funding for the NHS with an average real terms funding increase of 3.4% per year until 23. And this funding settlement was aiming to support improvements in healthcare services, reduce waiting times, boost mental health services, and invest in technology and infrastructure. The long-term sustainability of NHS funding remains still a subject of debate and ongoing discussion in this government, with questions about resource allocations, workforce shortages, and the overall funding model. And instead of improving the NHS as the Leave campaign promised, Brexit made the situation even worse for the NHS. And so I just can say, congratulations, especially to Farage and Johnson. But there's also another topic that I have to address quickly today aside from Brexit, because Britain will host the first international summit on artificial intelligence this year. And the aim is a global approach to limit the risks associated with this technology. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said during a visit to Washington, AI has incredible potential to change our lives for the better, but we need to make sure it's being developed and used in a safe way. Sunak said that before his meeting with US President Joe Biden on Thursday. Time and time again throughout history, new revolutionary technologies have been created that we have used for the benefit of mankind, is what Sunak said. And this must now be implemented again. The summit is expected to take place in the autumn and will bring together like-minded countries to lay the foundations for regulation, as was said by a spokesman for the British head of government. At the end of May, the European Union and the USA announced a draft for a voluntary joint code of conduct for artificial intelligence. And according to EU Competition Commissioner Margrethe Vestager, this should be presented in the next few weeks. A legislative process is currently underway in the EU to restrict the development of artificial intelligence. The previous EU draft law provides for bans on biometric surveillance, emotion recognition, and systems for predicting crime. In addition, systems such as ChatGPT or Midjourney should be subject to special rules. Images and text created in such programs should also be recognizable as such. At the end of May, a number of experts warned of the risk of annihilation by AI. And in a brief statement, it said addressing the risks posed by AI should be a global priority alongside other societal risks such as pandemics and nuclear war. And the technology advisor to British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has warned in no uncertain terms of the deadly dangers of artificial intelligence. The technology could develop dangerous threats that could kill many people. That is what Matt Clifford told British broadcaster Talk TV. Artificial intelligence must be regulated globally as soon as possible, otherwise very powerful systems could emerge, he warned. It's currently not clear how AI models can be controlled. You can already use AI to develop new instructions for bioweapons or to launch large-scale cyber attacks, said Clifford. There are many different risks with AI. In the industry, we often talk about short-term and long-term risks, and the short-term risks are already pretty scary, he said. And asked how great the risk is that AI will wipe out humanity, Clifford said, "I think it's not zero." And as I said, Prime Minister Sunak also wants to talk to US President Joe Biden about artificial intelligence during his visit to Washington. Leading experts recently warned that artificial intelligence is a potential threat to humanity and must be given a global priority alongside other risks of societal proportions, as I already mentioned, like pandemics and nuclear war. But an expert from the University of Oxford has described this warning as a PR campaign. The chatbot ChatGPT, which can formulate sentences at human level, had triggered a new hype about artificial intelligence in the past few months, though. When used correctly, artificial intelligence is extremely useful. That was emphasized by Clifford, but it is conceivable that AI will cure diseases, boost economic production, and help us develop a carbon-neutral economy, he said. But at the same time, he must be thinking a lot about Skynet when saying the other parts of his sentences. But we will see. I better wait for the discussions between the EU and the USA. And if Sunak does this conference, I'm quite sure that the USA and the EU will be there. They already started this path and can contribute a lot to this conference or this summit. And I wish Rishi Sunak all the best there. And I just want to remind everyone of the banner up here. If you haven't taken a closer look, just read it. You can help starting another channel that needs a little bit of investment because of its complexity of the topic and the let's say, the challenge to do real trending videos on that topic. And so you can help Outside Views getting there. If you ever wanted to support Outside Views, this is the perfect time to do so. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.